If you don't, hi everybody that's listening. Last episode had already had 1,000 views, so a little bit more people interested in
Wow.
what other people have to say. So that's always nice. It was episode number 6. I did that classic ADHD thing where the first 3 episodes are put up in like 7 seconds. And then scrambled to find more people to talk to, and everybody was delayed. So it's gone back to one a week, which I think is a good schedule. Um,
As it should be.
this this is Darby, and we are going to talk today about neurodiversity, mostly in teachers and probably just in general as well.
Hmm.
What it all means, why is it important? Um, why, what are the sort of problems that neurodiverse people will face in teaching, which I guess is probably the same that they would face in other professions. Just a lot of issues seem to be amplified in teaching, and neurodiverse teachers dealing with neurodiverse students and an
Exactly.
environment that is not enough for either of them.
Mm.
I think we can then finish on what you know what things can schools do, what can other teachers do to kind of make things easier, understanding even to that point to help people along. So I'm going to hand this over to Darby. She knows what she's talking about and loves to talk about it. So that's two good things for this podcast. So I'm
Yes.
going to hand the floor
Uh,
over to you, and I'll ask questions along the way.
awesome. All right. Thanks, Liam. Yeah, I don't have anything prepared per se. I just, I know a lot. Well, I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I still learn. Every day is a learning experience. Um, being late diagnosed myself. So I was only diagnosed autistic at 20 and uh, later diagnosed autistic and ADHD 2 years, just over 2 years ago, or a little under 2 years ago, actually. So this became a whole special interest of mine, following that and understanding that. So that influenced the research that I did for my master's project recently. I should preface, I have been a teacher for the last 4 years, primary trained with a science minor, questioned it my entire degree, and uh, kept going because I was like, yeah, no, I don't know what else I would do if I didn't do. I was like, I can sort of do this. I think I'm interested in it, and don't get me wrong, I like teaching at first, but um, it did have an effect after a while. Wasn't accommodating myself. I didn't know I needed to accommodate myself, and it did end in burnout for me, which ultimately was good because it led to the realization that I want to do guidance counseling, which I've just been trained in. Um, and
Is that what your
through that,
master's? Is that what
that
your
was what my
master's
master's,
was?
yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
Masters of Education, specializing in guidance and counseling. So
Yeah.
um, now I'm trying to make that jump from teaching to counseling, proving
Yes.
harder than I would like, but
Yeah.
I'll get there. Um, so first and foremost, how familiar are you with neurodiversity and sort of like
Me,
what neurodiversity is? Hmm?
I'm ADHD dyslexic. And neurodiversity for me is pretty much if you would interpret a situation or something someone said in a way that's different from the normal, you're neurodiverse.
Hmm.
That is, I think, the definition that I would use.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's is becoming the sort of growing message, I guess, because most people would think autism and ADHD predominantly,
exactly.
and that's if they even know what neurodiversity is. Um, sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
And remember having a head of well-being who was an ex-soldier with PTSD. Who was like, "Do you think I would be neurodivergent?" Like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
if if you would, this is it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard to quantify what's normal anymore
And
because
and
it's
that's the thing is it's a matter of and so depends on which model you sort of look at it through. There's the
yeah,
pathological model, and the disability model, medical model. But
yeah,
what I will probably focus on is the neurodiversity uh, model or neurodiversity paradigm model,
yeah,
which is what we're trying to move towards. Which basically, so neurodiversity was originally first coined by an Australian research, I think she was a sociologist or something, Judy Singer, actually.
yep. I know the
Um,
name.
yeah, so, and she basically was to describe the natural sort of neurological, neurocognitive diversity that was evolutionary in humans. So it's just views
Yeah,
any cognitive or neurological difference as natural because it's something that occurs naturally and it is as useful and fundamental as biodiversity. So when we consider it in the terms of biodiversity, we know that we need a vast biodiversity in order to have a healthy sort of
Yeah.
environment and such. So if we think about that in terms of neurodiversity, it's important that we have lots of variations in how brains function and perceive things, and in order to actually be able to progress as people. And like, we all have our own different things, so it's hard to sort of, like you said, quantify. But interesting was in my research, sorry, don't mind me, I've got a little crochet project that I call my productive fidgeting, because I can try and concentrate a bit. Now I've lost my train of thought. ADHD.
You're
Silly mind
quantifying,
blown. Yeah,
quantifying
yeah.
neurodiverse. Okay.
Thank you. Yes. So in my like doing my research, because I had to get all the background on neurodiversity and look at what research existed prior to mine.
Yeah.
And I found that, so it was actually quite interesting because, even myself, all I knew about neurodiversity was it was autism and ADHD. I knew something
Yeah.
about, like, it might include Tourette's, and some tic disorders and similar things. But what I learned was that it it's any condition that affects the neurological or your cognitive profile. So
Yeah.
it can be acquired, can be innate. So innate are things that are developmental, like autism, ADHD, things that don't, they're developmental. You're born with it, comes and it just
Yeah.
presents um, as it is, where there's acquired neurodiversity as well, which is like brain injuries and
Trauma,
that's the biggest
trauma-induced
one that I always remember.
ADHD is,
Yes, trauma. Yes,
yeah.
thank you. I should have I've needed better notes, but it's like I know
All
it,
good.
but then trying to actually verbalize things is really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll prompt because I do
yes,
the
good,
same
good.
thing. I'll talk.
Yes. Yeah, no. So it's neurodiversity, and a neurodivergent person is anyone whose cognitive ability or neurological profile differs from that which is considered statistically normal or average. So it's hard to sort of classify. It's just that what we classify as the norm, like
Yeah.
and it's more to do with social norms as well. Because if you think about how we actually look at, for example, being productive, like a lot of neurodivergent people are very productive, but they have to have certain accommodations and adjustments to be able to do it their way for it to
Yeah.
work, where they don't see that as the normal sort of productive. I think I tangented there, but
Mm.
prepared that will happen a
Yeah.
lot.
So the medical model would be the traditional deficit-based model, but
Yes.
you can't,
Yeah.
you are neurodiverse if you can't do X, Y, Z, or you
Yeah. So
have X, Y, Z.
medical model looks at it as something to be cured, something that to be
Yeah.
fixed. Like that's sort of like curing autism and stuff, and trying to get people to be what they consider to be normal. And the pathology sort of model is similar, and it looks at neurodivergent conditions as a sort of as a disorder, where neurodiversity paradigm looks at it as it's just the normal variation in how you think, and it
Yeah.
just requires the appropriate learning about yourself, learning your individual neurological and cognitive differences, what your sensory differences are, and accommodating that yourself. Because as the saying goes, you've met one autistic or one ADHD or one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person, because they
Yeah.
all, you
They're
can't
all
classify it
different.
all as the same. And it bugs me when I see
No.
it in schools and stuff, when
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, these kids have autism, so they all have the same adjustment. So that's like, well, that's
Yeah.
not gonna work necessarily.
No.
They don't all present the
No.
same. Very
No.
different.
And they don't all react the same. Even if they do
Mm,
present the same, they may not react the same to
exactly.
an
Because there's
adjustment
all the
or a,
other, then you go onto the like think about biopsychosocial model of
yeah.
how we look at things. And you look at, like, if we had two autistic people, one, and you've got all the cultural differences. So intersectionality is something that comes up a lot talking about neurodiversity. Looking at the how different things interact with each other. So like different biases like racism, ableism, sexism, uh, and like, so there's because there's a lot of queer neurodivergence. So it's often coincides with a lot of other things like disability, and it's the way it presents is impacted by people's culture, socioeconomic upbringing, what their backgrounds are like, and how it all plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very out and proud about my ADHD. I
Mm.
very much tell everyone, anyone and everyone, this is who I am.
I am too. Out
Uh,
of curiosity, were you diagnosed when you were younger, or were you late diagnosed?
32
Mm.
diagnosed. I mean, I knew I was ADHD, but I was too successful and had done too many things in my
Mm.
life to possibly have anything wrong with me as an adult. But no one
Yeah.
saw the spirals and the addictions and
Yeah.
the mental health struggles and
Exactly.
the multiple diagnoses before that, and then finally getting that diagnosis, and then they only see
Mm.
the post, which is a reasonably functioning human being.
Yeah.
They don't
And
see
it
what that
takes a
person has.
lot of learning and a lot of other
Yeah,
things along the way to actually get to functioning. And even then, it's
well,
always a journey. That was what I learned from my psychologist, who was amazing. When
yeah,
I got diagnosed the second time, because I was diagnosed when I was 20. That was a very average experience, but
yeah.
because I never even considered the fact that I was autistic until some random person that I had met twice went, you asked me if I was autistic because he'd noticed met these things and he listed them off, and I was like, oh, that would actually make a lot of sense. And then I started to research it and went, oh, this all
Went down
explains
the
a
rabbit hole.
lot about me. And
Yeah,
like the next day, I went to my mum and my sister's. It's always my favorite story to tell. Is I went to them and went, "Do you think I'm autistic?" My mum went, "No." My sisters went, "Yep." And at this point, they were like 12, 14. So I'm like, what do
yeah,
you know? And then I Googled it myself and went, okay, this does add up. This explains a lot of
so
things. Like dad, not like me not being able to make eye contact and copping a lot of
yeah,
flack for not making eye contact and rolling my eyes when I wasn't because I didn't thought I was like, I thought I was just blinking or something. And dad thought I was rolling my eyes. And it was, it
yeah,
explained a lot. But I was like, oh, cool. I've always been this way. I'm gonna just continue living life as I always have. So I kept going. Well, actually, first I got on antidepressants because
yeah.
I'd always thought I was just anxious. Then we found out about the autism, and turns out it was concomitant social anxiety. So I got medicated for the social anxiety, and I know that was the right thing because I could finally breathe. That was how I knew. I said how I described
Yeah.
it was when I first got on medication. I was like, oh, never realized quite how anxious I was until I got on the antidepressants and was like, oh my
You don't
God, I can
realize how
actually
bad it is
fully breathe because it was just the
until
norm.
you,
It was how I'd always lived. It was what I knew. And then
yeah,
I was living my best life. This goes into 2020, by the way. So I moved out. I was feeling very successful and living life, and then moved around. I lived very in the same place for a year because COVID kind of locked everything down. And then I moved around every sort of 6 months ish and was like, why do I still feel kind of sad? Why do I still struggle with these things? Why am I not satisfied? And it took me basically burning out. Like, well, not basically, I did burn out, just wasn't like clinically or anything. Um, I self-diagnosed my burnout, as we do.
yeah.
Um, because I just thought I was depressed. I was really struggling in my job and like what I was like, why do I not like, why am I struggling in teaching? Why do I not like this? I studied for this. I thought this is what I wanted, and got to the point where I thought I was depressed. I was throwing up bile every morning. Like the anxiety was that bad, and it just took a lot of self-reflection and realizing, hmm, this was not it, and change roles and later, but then it still came back. And so I went, hang on a second, we're not going to go down this path again. When I thought I felt better, then I didn't feel better. So I kept teaching. And then eventually sort of thought, oh, like saw these things on TikTok, classic TikTok, always down the rabbit
I
hole. I don't
spoke
know if you're on
spoke
TikTok or
to
if that's a
spoke to
too
Peter
young.
the last episode of the episode before, and she said the exact
Yeah.
same thing.
Yep.
She watched
Oh,
TikTok and then
TikTok is dangerous. You lose so many hours down there, but it's like, oh, and I know so many people that have had the same experience. That's like, oh, I saw this thing on Facebook or this and this, and it's like, oh, that actually I related to that, and that was about for me with ADHD. It was also coming from a friend that I knew who was autistic and had ADHD, and I was like, this sort of, I mean, we vibe, and like I feel like this could be maybe there is something else here. Went to my GP and he's like, oh yeah, maybe. Got properly assessed
yeah,
and yeah, found out autistic and ADHD. So ASD level 2, ADHD combined type was diagnosed
yeah,
in April 2023. So yeah, just under 2 years. Since then, been on a big learning journey myself, did my master's. And yeah, looked at because I was a neurodivergent teacher who was struggling with teaching and obviously wondered how many other people felt the same. And turns out there's a lot of us because it is a very
Yes,
different
definitely.
experience being neurodivergent in the classroom. Like I thought it was just me. I was like, oh, am I just not cut out for teaching? Am I like, why do I suck so much at this? Why do I end up drained at the end of the day? And I realized it was basically constant sensory overwhelm and just I
Yeah,
wasn't regulated and I was couldn't regulate trying to regulate 23 children if like it's just because I
yeah,
worked predominantly lower primary as well, so it's very intensive
yeah,
and stuff. They need a lot of
yeah.
help. And yeah, like we've seen it, the people say, oh, it's been diagnosed too much, but it's
Way
not.
underdiagnosed.
It's way underdiagnosed. And but you look at the schools these days, and it's like that's why people say it because there's so many kids with letters attached to their names, and it's not a bad thing. I was always
No, definitely.
Dad always said it was like no, stop looking for labels, but it's not a bad thing to
It allows kids to
have
understand the
that
brain.
knowledge. Exactly. And I think it's
And
important. So I like that what you said about being out and proud about being, I'm also out and proud and I try and use that with my students to go, look, like particularly pull them up when if kids are using, oh, you're autistic, they use it as like more of an insult. And it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with being autistic. I'm autistic. And just being that sort of showing them that there is, you know, there's success, there is people and it does, and people that understand them even when they don't understand themselves. And I mean, I'm still learning, but I don't know how much you feel like you understand yourself. It was a whole learning thing for me.
I'm
Um,
all right. I'm all right these days, but it's hard to tell. Like I woke up this morning, I got up, I did my got before, and I did all my admin on the computer, and then the kids got out of bed, and then I was not as regular as I thought I was. And then I slept on my desk at lunch in my
yep.
staff room because I was so overstimulated. And I was like, I'm done. I just
Mm,
need to switch off my brain for 15 minutes. And my
yep.
department woke me up and, you okay? Do you need to go home? I'm like, no, I just need to not
Just
be in
need
existence
a
for
break. Yeah, tap out.
15
Yeah.
minutes. I needed to not be in existence. And I was good
Yeah.
again. Good to go again.
Yeah. And that's the
But
thing is it's just learning because I mean everyone can benefit from breaks and this and that, but everyone has their own way of processing things and have their own sensory
yeah,
profiles. That's a whole other thing. So, like I said, catch me because I will go on tangent.
that's
So,
good. So
um,
what problems did you find that us neurodivergence face, specifically as teachers, but I imagine
mhm,
that would correlate to other professions as well. What was
100%.
the big hundreds? What were the biggest ones? Let's go with the biggest ones that you could probably see in most people.
So
Like,
unfortunately, like a lot of, so my research was qualitative research done via a survey, which I submitted to a couple of Facebook pages that were neurodivergent teacher pages and went, hey, voluntary, you guys want to give me your
yeah,
experiences because that was what we, I was trying to understand, and it included looking at things uh, like there was open-ended questions which some people liked, some people didn't like, to gather qualitative information on people's experiences as well as other scales and stuff to measure things like depression, anxiety, well-being, sort of things. And the findings, unfortunately, like while they proved the hypothesis wasn't really a hypothesis, but what I expected was
yeah,
negative um, experiences. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of people also see the strengths because we do have our strengths, but the common sort of sorry, I'll just jump on. I'm just looking back at the research. Um,
so,
so common themes that I found in the participants' responses, the larger areas that people reported strengths were things like creativity, passion, empathy, organization. So a lot of neurodivergent teachers are really creative and really passionate about what they're doing. They want to help students like at the student that we were. We all know that we were that student at some point that we want
yeah,
to help. And as my friend says, we always you have to be a little neurospicy to work with kids because we kind of got to be at a lower,
yeah.
like be able to get to a kid level to get the kids on board.
I think
Um,
I think. I think when we do really well, we're doing really well. When
Mm,
we struggle harder than anyone
mm,
else. I think that's
100%.
probably that's
Yeah,
some of
so we
my
do have
experience.
exactly, and that's the thing is people don't consider us as having strength. They just see the
It's the
well,
deficit problem.
that's yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem with the low and high functioning autism is like, well, where we would be considered high functioning or neurodivergence because we don't. We're all the better term is low support needs because we don't have support
No support
as
needs,
many
yeah.
support needs as someone that's nonverbal and stuff. But that doesn't mean we don't have
I
struggles.
prefer that term. I need to use that more, low support
Mm,
needs, as opposed to high and low functioning. I don't use high and low functioning, but I
mm.
think high and low support needs is probably a better way.
Yeah, it's the sort of the way we're trying to move towards it because yeah, high and low functioning is detrimental on both sides because it disregards the struggles of higher functioning neurodivergence. So they don't they're like, oh
Usually
no, you can't
struggle.
be because you're fine.
Yeah.
You're successful. You've got your family. You do this, that, and the other. But it's like, well, no, I'm in the crying in the corner because my kid opened something too
Yeah.
loud. Like it's like there's a whole other bit that they don't see. And then on the flip side, they
Yeah.
don't see the strengths of the lower functioning. Like just because they may not communicate verbally doesn't mean they're not incredibly intelligent
Yeah.
and they have things to share and artistic and creative and things. Um, Common ones were organization, so
Yeah.
mostly among the autistics, typically because ADHD makes it a bit hard to be organized as such. But um, and the biggest one I think was empathy, um, and empathy and passion because it was there, and that's something that I relate to myself, being able to relate to students and passionate about helping them. So,
Is that that was a
I've
problem
always
that they couldn't relate to the students, or they
no,
could?
no. So this is a strength that they reported that
Yeah.
they
Okay. Cool.
could
Yeah.
relate to neurodivergent students.
Yeah.
So it's like, seeing your younger self and trying to help your younger self in a sense, sometimes
Yes.
in your students.
My aim is that no kid ever has the same experience that I did in school.
Mm,
So that's my okay. When things get hard, that's what I fall back on. I think most
mm.
people, same experience, same situation, probably have a
Yeah,
similar
exactly. That's why
thing
I
to
ended
fall
up
back on.
going to changing to guidance because I realized because what I went into teaching to do was to be the safe and supportive person. This is always what I said I wanted to do, be the safe and supportive person for the kids that didn't have one. And just to be that person that because a lot of kids
Yeah.
they like we don't know what's going on at home. Like there's a
No,
whole other little person in there that we need to find out about. And it's hard to do that in a classroom. So that's why
definitely.
I've
I
diverged to
have a
counseling.
very old school
Mm,
head of department, and I'm drawing circles around students on their desk to get them to stay inside their circles. And it's like, why are you doing that in a science class? And I'm like, because there's more to teaching than
it
teaching
is.
the content.
No, and that's the thing is that's a lot of people don't understand. Non-teachers go, oh, it's so easy. Mm-mm. No, no, not when you've got
It's
25
just
kids with all a variation of needs and things and interests and things that impact how they will come
everything.
into a day. And it varies
And
day to day
they're,
because,
and they're different every single day, every single
yep,
lesson. They
whether
are
they are
slightly different.
neurodivergent or neurotypical doesn't matter. They're
Yeah.
children. They have all the other. So that's the other stuff that we found out about in guidance and counseling because it was all child and youth based. So there's the hormones and all of it. There's so many different things that go
Yes.
on that make things difficult for kids. Sorry, sidetracking myself again. But struggles, reported struggles
So,
were.
so strengths were organization, relating to students.
Mhm.
I think building relationships is probably easier when the kids will know. They know when you're a bit weird.
Mm,
Um, I kind of appreciate it in a
mm.
way.
And that's the
So
thing
yeah,
is like it's just
organization.
about getting them on side is just getting on their level and making them feel heard and understood.
Yeah,
I always say that if you treat them like treat treat them how you want them to behave is sort of the way I look
exactly.
at it. Because if you treat them how you expect them to behave, that's how they will behave. So if we're treating them like
High
they're going to act up and how
expectations.
they're going to if they're going to be difficult, then yes, they're going to react that way because they're reacting to us treating them that way. Whereas if we treat them like they are capable human beings and they can, make their own decisions and they are essentially like adults themselves to a degree, with the upper kids, but
Yeah,
even with primary kids, you need to sort of understand them and help them understand themselves to be able to actually do things properly. I
yeah.
think I
It's
I think I lost my
I think
point there.
that's
But
if we focus a little more on well-being in classrooms, I think, yeah.
We need
we
to.
would have
That is a big,
far less issues.
yes, that is a big passion thing of mine. Um, is that we do need to, and there was a big push in Queensland the last couple of years, but I guess that was problematic for me because I came in a bit too late after that big push, so I was then struggling to find a job. But
Yeah,
it is fundamentally important. Like look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to have their physical needs met, so food, sleep, water. You need to have their emotional needs met, their feeling of safety, feeling having connections and all of that before we can even begin to expect them to learn. And that's what a lot of schools don't understand. And it varies for neurodivergent students as well. But if we just take everything back to the basics, the fundamentals of ensuring well-being, physical and emotional, then we can definitely grow and better our students' outcomes. Like it would
that's where
be
that understanding of neurodivergent kids,
mm,
most teachers haven't been through that. They can't relate on that level. They
mm.
can't understand because they've never been through it.
And it is hard
All right.
to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it. Like I had that experience. We did a whole school PD with Positive Partnerships, which was an autistic based program run through, I think it was Autism Queensland, um, which I was really excited for. I was like, awesome, this is going to be a great learning thing for everybody. And uh, other co-workers and myself that are autistic and stuff and have those are neurodivergent. And we were like, well, we're not learning anything new. This is all stuff we already knew. And it was just triggering for us. Like there was a video that they showed to demonstrate the autistic sensory experience of being outside, like all
Yeah.
of the different noises and stuff. And they're like, we got warned that there was going to be a lot of noises. Well, I did. One of my friends didn't, and poor thing had a meltdown because I had luckily had my loop earplugs in.
Yeah.
And so the noises didn't bother me, but then came the flashing quick
Yeah.
screen, and that set me off. So I was out. And, I had coworkers that were like, oh, I actually really vibe with that. I thought it was really cool. And it's like, well, you see the difference in our processing here is that to you, it's not offensive. To us, it's like, it's painful.
Yeah. It's torture.
Mm.
So, so the
Um,
deficits, what were the deficits or the struggles
the
that
struggles. Yeah.
you
So the
had come up the
struggles,
most in your
yeah, yeah. So the predominant struggles were, I mean, sensory was a big one because,
yeah.
in a classroom with 15 to 25 kids and everyone's talking at the same time, it does not take long for that to overwhelm you. And particularly when they never shut up. But,
Correct.
social and interpersonal relationships. So having like relationships with colleagues and worrying about being standoffish to things. But then there's also the side of the professionalism and struggling with knowing like listening to leadership and struggling with management, which is a common autistic
Yeah.
thing, is not seeing the hierarchy of like they're just like, well, if I know more, then I know more. Like it's like I'm not
Yeah.
going to bow down to you because which can get us in trouble. But
Yes,
like
definitely.
staying on top, like, and professionalism in terms of admin stuff, like ADHD makes it hard to stay on top of all the reporting and the paperwork and everything else that goes into
Yeah.
being a teacher. Um, and yeah, communication. So like things like sudden changes and like no meetings without warnings and like things that
Just about
are,
to say the biggest one is the meetings.
yeah.
I just come have a chat in my office. It's like
Oh, that it
anxiety
ruins my
inducing.
day. Like
It's like
I
a week.
had it once where I was out for my morning walk and I get an email that was like, hey, can you come in for a chat this morning? And this was not the first time that she'd done this. I had spoken to my head of primary previously, going, hey, can you not just ask me for a chat because it freaks me out? Tell me what it's about.
Yep.
She didn't. And it was just, just I literally had a meltdown that morning. My poor friend and coworker had to calm me down, help me write an
Yep.
email back to go, look, I can't look on this meeting this because she did actually give me it was context to something, but it was like, look, I can't face this right now. I'm not in a
Yep.
space. Like you can't just drop that on me and expect it to happen because I need time to prepare for these things. I need time to
Yep.
process. And it just,
100%.
yeah, ruins
It's either
everything.
that let's talk right now
Mm,
or warning with context and
yeah,
exactly what's going to happen.
exactly. Um, and so that was the self-reported strengths and struggles of neurodivergent teachers. I also asked about their self-accommodations. That was to do with at home, more so because then we discussed work accommodations was its own thing, which unfortunately non-existent for a lot of people. The work accommodations, like even if they have,
if you don't understand,
even if they
my
have,
life, everybody listening, pausing the recording. So had a thousand.
like even if they have
a little bit more people
because
interested
a lot of
in what
people
other
are
people
not
have to say.
like I'm going through
That's
the
always
process of
nice.
applying for jobs and stuff, and I'm like I'm
It was
out
episode
proud,
number
like you said,
6.
but
I did that
I don't
classic
know
ADHD thing where the
how
first
and
3
when to
episodes are put
disclose
up in
the
like
fact that I
7
am
seconds.
who I am, because
And then scrambled to
it's
find
important
what
because they
ADHD
need to know
to.
if I want to be able to
Everybody was
ask for
delayed.
accommodations. But then
So
it's like, am I
it's gone
shooting
back to
myself in
1
the
a
foot
week,
by
which I
telling
think
them?
is
Where as it
so
should be, common with work
this is
accommodations,
Darby, and we
a
are
lot of
going
them,
to talk
even when
today
they had
about
disclosed and they
neurodiversity,
had
mostly in teaching,
like all of these
probably
things,
just in
a lot
general
of
as well.
schools they just
What
didn't
it all
provide
means, why is it
accommodations even when
important?
requested. At most, there was like maybe some extra time
Why?
or two or some
What
leeway
are
with
the sort of
deadlines and
problems
stuff,
that,
but
people,
that was
neurodiverse
it
people
really.
will
Like a lot of
face
it
in
was self
teaching, which I
accommodations,
guess is
like having
probably the
earplugs
same
or noise
that they will
cancelling
face
headphones.
in other professions.
Things for
It's
regulation,
what
like
issues
setting
seem to be
routines, like
amplified in teaching
particularly for autistic people,
neurodiverse
routines.
teachers
But I
dealing with
mean,
neurodiverse
ADHD
students and an
it
environment that
has
is not set up for either of
thrives
them.
with routine as well. It just doesn't
I think we can then
have to
finish
mix
on
it up, have a rough
what
routine so that the ADHD doesn't go
what things can
natural.
schools do, what can other teachers do
Regular
to
exercise
kind of
is a big one,
make things
particularly for
easier,
ADHDers.
understanding
Because
even
when
to
we
that
are
point
feeling, something
to
I've seen
help
a lot
people
on
along.
social
So
media
I'm
as
going to
well,
hand
is
this over to
that when we
Darby.
are feeling like we may feel like we think we're
She
anxious, or
knows
we
what she's
feel like,
talking about and loves to
there's
talk
just
about
that
it. So that's two
like
good things.
agitated feeling in the I don't know,
So I'm going to hand the
me,
floor over to you,
you
and
just get
I'll
that
ask questions along the way.
unexplained
All right,
agitation,
thanks, Liam.
and your body needing
I don't
to
have
move,
anything prepared
which
per
I've been in
se.
denial
I
about,
just,
but
I know a lot.
it is
Yeah.
your body
I'm not
needing
gonna
to
say I'm
move.
an
So
expert.
we
I
always
still learn.
benefit from
Every day
moving.
is a learning
And
experience.
like you said, with your little nap,
Being late
having time
diagnosed
to yourself
myself,
to
so I was only
sort of
diagnosed
take
autistic
space
at
from all
20,
that stimulation is
and
very important. To have
later
time to
diagnosed
decompress,
autistic and ADHD,
if not time to
2 years,
yourself,
just
but
over 2
like
years
just
ago, or a
time
little under
that
2
you
years
set
ago, actually.
aside to
So this became a whole
to be yourself,
special
and
interest of
look
mine,
after yourself, because
following
something
that
that
and
a lot of
understanding
people
that. So that
don't do.
influenced the research that I did for my master's project recently.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of
I should preface, I have been a teacher for the
We're
last
not
4
good
years,
looking after
primary trained
ourselves. We've got
with
to
a
look
science
after the
minor,
kids first, but
questioned it my entire
in order to
degree,
be able to do
and
that, we need to look after
kept
And that's
going
the
because I
thing.
was
We're
a
a
lot
yeah, no,
more
I don't know what else I would do
aware,
if I didn't.
even though
I was like, I can
you and
sort of
I
do
would
this.
be aware of our own
I think I'm
needs.
interested
We
in it,
are
and don't get me wrong, I
more
like
attuned
teaching
to
at
our
first,
students'
but
needs than we are to our own.
like we get so distracted by
It
making sure
did
that
have an
little
effect
Jimmy has his
after a
headphones
while.
and that they've got their
wasn't accommodating
fidget and
myself.
they're
I
all
didn't know
fine,
I
so
needed
that
to accommodate myself, and
we don't think about
it did end in burnout for me.
I need my headphones. I haven't eaten
Which
that. Like we
ultimately
don't think about
was good, 'cause it led
ourselves.
to
We're
the
too busy
realization that I
focused
want
on
to do guidance counseling,
little
which
Jimmy
I've
and
just been
Bonnie
trained in.
and whoever else is in the class that we need to
Is that what your
regulate that
master's?
we
Is
can
that what
actually. That
your
was what my
master's
master's
is?
do. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
Masters of Education,
So common requests,
specializing in guidance counseling.
accommodations were things like requests.
So they made requests
Now I'm trying
about
to make that
alternative
jump
work
from
arrangements. A lot of people
teaching
went
to
to
counseling,
part-time or
proving
remote work
harder than I would like,
for like
but
post burnout. So that's an
so
important thing to
first
touch
and
on. My
foremost,
research
how
was
familiar
looking
are
at
you with neurodiversity?
mental health,
and
well-being, and
sort of
burnout of neurodivergent
like
educators.
Me,
what
I'm
neurodiversity
And a lot of
is?
supports were medication.
I'm ADHD,
Given some people fight
dyslexic.
against it, but sometimes
And
It's not a bad
neurodiversity
thing,
for me
and
is
that
pretty
seems to be clear
much
that it's
if you
not.
would
And
interpret a
big
situation or
learning thing for
something
me from
someone
big
said
takeout that I always
in a
share with
way that's
everyone
different
that my
from the
psychologist
normal,
gave me was
you're
you
neurodivergent.
can't treat one without treating the
That
other.
is,
So
I think,
like I had
the
autism and ADHD, I was
definition that I would use.
technically treating the
Yeah,
autism
and
with
that's
the antidepressants, and
becoming
that's how the ADHD was
sort of
exacerbated.
growing
So if
message,
you
I
treat
guess,
one
because
without
most
the
people
other,
would
the other
think
just goes
autism and
haywire.
ADHD,
And you need
predominantly.
to, so
Exactly.
you need to,
and that's even if they
address
that's
it
if they even
any
know
which way.
what neurodiversity
This was
is.
in answer to my
Sorry,
mom's question of does she need to be medicated?
And I
And she's like, well, if it's medication or
having
not,
a
you need
head of well-being who
to
was an
treat
ex-soldier with
your
PTSD.
condition,
He was like, "Do you think I would be
like meet your
neurodivergent?"
needs as
Yeah,
such to
definitely.
be regulated
100%.
and to
If you
actually
would,
live life and be
it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard to
okay,
quantify what's
not
normal
in
anymore
a state of constant
And that's the thing,
overwhelm
is
and
it's a matter
stress
of
and burnout.
and
So depends on which model you
things
sort of
like
look at it
therapy
through.
as
There's
well,
the
sensory tools,
pathological
pathological
like I
model,
said, earplugs, headphones, fidget
and
tools. So I actually made a point
went through
like
a phase. I don't
disability
do it as much
model,
now, but I went through a phase of
medical model.
one of my favorite tools
But
is a
what I will probably focus on is the
I don't know, have you seen the
neurodiversity
Tangles?
model or
They're like
neurodiversity
metal
paradigm.
plus model,
We
which
don't
is
have one with
what
me
we're
right
trying
here.
to
Damn
move
it. Okay,
towards.
I'm in the perfect place.
Which
I have
basically
so many of them,
neurodiversity
but there's none
was
close by.
originally first coined by an Australian sociologist
see if I
named Judy Singer, actually.
Um,
They're little plastic,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you would have probably
yeah,
seen
so, yeah.
them.
And she
Yeah,
basically
they're little things. I used
was
to
to
wear it around my
describe
fingers
the natural
and
sort of
or just play with it. I used to
neurological
do it at meetings and
neurocognitive
stuff when I was
diversity
in
that
class,
was
so that
evolutionary
just
in
showing
humans.
kids,
So it's
hey,
just used
like you can
any
like I use it
cognitive
too. It's
or
not a
neurological
bad thing
difference
to use, and it's
as
helping me
natural
concentrate.
because it's
Yeah, there you
something
go.
that occurs
Yeah, similar
naturally
thing.
That's
and
my kid.
is
The one I get for the kid.
as useful
Yeah,
and
yeah.
fundamental as
Right,
biodiversity.
there's
So
so
when we
many
consider
different
it
things
in
out
the
there.
terms of
You can be sensory seeking and
biodiversity,
sensory
we know that
learning.
we
So I
need
might not like loud noises, but I might
a
really like
vast
something
biodiversity in order to
play
have a
with
healthy
that sort of
may
environment
or
and
may not make noise.
such. So
I
if
try
we
not
think
to
about
make
that in
noises,
terms
but
of neurodiversity, it's
sometimes
important
it's
that we
inevitable
have
with clicky things.
lots of variations
Yep.
in how brains function and perceive things, and in order to actually be able to progress as people.
Support
And
and
also like
you know,
externalizing
we all have
executive
our own
functioning.
different
So
things,
like there was
so
like
it's
reminders and
hard
having
to sort of,
things
like you said,
there
quantify,
to remind them. So it's
interesting was
because you know
in my
executive functioning
research,
things like
behind
working
me, I've got
memory,
a little
organization,
crochet project that
I call my
Yeah.
productive,
fidgeting.
all of that. So we struggle with that, and
because I can
sometimes we
try and
need
concentrate
that
a bit.
externalization of that, so that we don't have to
what's my
think
train
about
of
it
thought?
in our brain. So like
ADHD.
we have that daily schedule to remind that tells us what we're
quantifying
doing
what-
when. And
Quantifying
we need
neurodiversity.
and looking at
Thank
the
you,
spreadsheet going,
yes.
okay, this is how many things we need. This is
So
what
in
we've
my
got,
doing my
sort of
research,
thing,
because
and
I had to get
having
a
those
background
things
on
in place
neurodiversity
to
and
look at compensate
what research
for
existed prior to
the
my
things that we struggle with.
and
Sometimes we need to
I
externalize it,
found
or we need to
that
pass it to someone else.
so
Like that was
it was actually quite interesting because
you know even
Yeah, having
myself,
having
all I knew about
graphical
neurodiversity
organizers
was it
and
was autism and
meeting schedules
ADHD.
and stuff.
I knew
printed
something
around is
about
very
like it
helpful.
might include Tourette's,
and
some
using an
shift
actual
disorders
diary and stuff is hard because as soon as it
similar
goes
things,
away,
but
out of sight, out of
what I
mind, it needs
learned
to be
was that
in sight
Boring.
all the time.
it's
boring.
any condition that
So
has
dopamine
that
mass.
affects
No,
the
it is.
neurological or your cognitive
I've tried
profile.
so many, you know,
So
every
it's-
ADHD has
Okay.
a
Can be
I've tried so
acquired,
many
can be
different
innate.
journals and
So
planners
innate
and
are
diaries
things that are
and there's just
developmental,
a
like
graveyard.
autism, ADHD,
I
things
gave up
that
on.
don't
I'm
they're
using
developmental.
diaries.
You're
Long ago.
born with it, comes
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
presents.
spending
So
about $500 on them.
as it is,
Cool.
where there's acquired
I love
neurodiversity
stationery
as
though.
well,
I'm a
which
bit of
is
a
like
stationary
brain
hoarder, so it's a
injuries
bit of a problem.
and
So
Trauma-
similar to me,
trauma
that's the biggest one that I always
issues.
remember.
Yes,
trauma,
yes.
self-reported struggles was just
Thank you.
general struggles where
I should
work
have-
impacts
need
was
a
things
better
that
notes.
people will believe
But it's like I know it,
by
but
their
trying to actually
managers, by
verbalize
their
things
co-workers
Yeah.
for being
I'll prompt. I'll prompt.
neurodivergent
I'll do the
and
same.
good,
I'll
yes.
prompt.
indirectly and directly. Like you know, you've got your microaggressions and you've got
Yeah,
things
no,
that
so it's
people just don't understand,
neurodiversity,
and
and a neurodivergent person is
inadvertently
anyone whose cognitive
like
ability or
making fun of
neurological
or,
profile differs from
you know,
that which is
hurting
considered
someone.
statistically normal
um
or
professionalism,
average. So
and
it's
then
hard
emotional and
to
mental
sort of
health
classify.
is a
It's
big
just
one,
that
because,
what
like we said, we often
classify as
get so focused on
the
our
norm,
kids that
like
we
the
neglect
and
ourselves
it's more to do
entirely.
with social norms as
And
well.
Yeah.
we just end up, if you think
completely
about
drained
at the end of the day, we haven't eaten.
how we actually
We're overstimulated.
look
The
at,
amount of
for
times I've come
example,
home to my
being
partner and just like
being
pull it apart. He's like,
productive.
what happened? It's like, I don't know.
A lot of neurodivergent people
It
are
was all
very
too much.
productive, but they have to
Yeah.
have certain accommodations and
Brain
adjustments
dump
to be
for
able to
half
do
an
it
hour,
their
then-
way
Yeah.
for it to
Yeah.
Or just cry.
work,
Usually
where they
cry
don't see
helps.
that as the normal sort of productive.
Yeah, and
there.
I just don't
Prepared
think
that will
these are
happen
the
a lot.
struggles that people are.
So the medical model would be the traditional
you hide from the world.
Yes.
You can't
Yeah.
polish version of you can't do X, Y, Z. Yeah,
Yeah, so the medical model looks at it as something to be
I'm
cured
much
and
better
something
now.
that can be
I don't
fixed. Like
try
that's
and
sort of
hide.
like curing autism and
I
stuff.
slept. I put my head on the
and
desk
trying
for
to
15
get
minutes
people to
lunchtime.
be
In the
I love
staff
that.
room,
They
and
can
I
love
didn't, and I
that.
didn't care.
And the pathology
That's the
for
thing, is because
model is
I mean, a
similar
lot
and
of
it
people may
looks
not
at
know that they're neurodivergent,
neurodivergent
but majority,
conditions
it's a
as
fair
sort of
proportion
as a
teachers
disorder.
would be. Because, like we said,
where
neurodivergent is
neurodiversity
anything that changes
paradigm
the way we think,
looks at it
or the
as
way that we
Yeah.
process
it's
things.
just a normal variation
Most
in
common being
how you
autism
think, and it
ADHD,
just requires the
You've
appropriate
got to be a little bit
Anxiety.
learning about
Anxiety.
learning
Anxiety
your
and
individual
neurological
Oh,
and
that was actually
cognitive differences,
thank you,
what your
bringing me
sensory
back to a point
differences
that I meant
are,
to
and
make way back at the start.
accommodating that yourself. Because
Was
as the
yeah,
saying goes,
neurodiversity
you've
is
met
literally
one
anything. So it
autistic
can
or
be
one
things like
ADHD or one
any mental health
neurodivergent person,
person, mental illness,
one
so things like
neurodivergent person,
schizophrenia,
because they're
things
all
like
you can't
all
classify it all as the
CPD,
same.
bipolar,
And it bugs me when I see
autism,
it in
depression, trauma,
schools and stuff.
all of
when
this
it's just like,
impacts how our
these
brain
kids have
functions and how
autism,
we
so they
perceive
all
things,
have the
and
same adjustment.
it
So that's
just
like, well,
changes how
that's
everything not
is
going to work
processed.
necessarily.
No.
and
They don't all present the
No.
same.
I don't think people quite understand
Very
the
No,
actual
and they don't all react the same. Even
fundamentals
if they
and
do
brain
present the
and
same,
like
they may not react the
neurological
same
chemical
to,
differences in
Exactly.
because
adjustments.
there's all the
Neurodivergent
other
brains.
then
you
such
go into
as
the like think
autism,
about
ADHD,
biopsychosocial model of how we look at things, and
interesting.
you look at
What should
like
I not remember
if
this
we had
week?
two
But I
autistic
wanna
people,
remember now.
And
we
you've got all
are
the cultural
the
differences.
way my
So
psychologist worded it is a specific
intersectionality is
deficit
something
in
that comes up a lot talking about neurodiversity.
it's a specific deficit
Looking
in
at
certain
how
neurotransmitters in
different
particular parts of the
things
brain.
interact with each other. So
So we
like
are low
different biases
in
like racism,
adrenaline,
ableism,
serotonin, and
sexism,
Yeah,
and like
low
there's a lot of
norepinephrine
queer
is
neurodivergence. So it's often coincides with a lot of other things like disability.
Interesting. Sometimes we're not
And
low on dopamine, it's just not in the right place.
It's
So
exactly
Ritalin-
because
it's
the way
not
it
about
presents is impacted
being
by
low
Ritalin
per se. It's about where it,
dopamine.
where it,
socioeconomic,
exactly. It's about where it
upbringing, what their
is.
backgrounds
So
are like,
like
and
because this
how it
like
all
say
plays
the
out.
amygdala or whichever part of the
Yeah.
brain it is that controls
Yeah, I'm
memory
very
and stuff,
out.
because
I'm
of its
very
division in
out
that
about my
it affects
ADHD.
that's what it affects.
Very much tells
Which I found really interesting.
everyone,
And, you know, it's
anyone
the
and
whole
everyone. This is
like
who
there's
I
the
am.
I am too. Out of
biology and
curiosity, were
there's the
you diagnosed when you were
neurochemical
younger,
side
or
of
were you
things,
late
but
diagnosed?
at the end of the day,
32
everyone's different. And
diagnosed.
it's just
I
about
mean, I knew I was
us
ADHD.
learning ourselves and
But
educating others.
there's only 4 neurotransmitters and had done too many things in my
all of
life
these
to
issues.
affect anything as an adult. But no
Yeah.
one saw the
If you have
spirals and the addictions and
serotonin,
the
Yeah.
anxiety, it's
the mental health struggles
and
Exactly.
the multiple diagnoses before that, and then finally we have a lot
have
of
you
this, and then
heard
they
of
see post
the-
issues.
Have you heard of the RCCX gene theory?
They don't see
And but it
what
takes
that
a
person has
lot
in the
of
gene was
A lot of learning and a
so
lot
there's
of
the it's the
other
RCCX
things along
gene
the way to
cluster,
actually get to functioning. And even then, it's
basically
always a journey.
explains
That was
why
what I learned
there
from
are
my
a lot of
psychologist, who was amazing.
comorbidities. Not necessarily
when
just with
I
autism
got
and stuff, but
diagnosed
it explains
the
why
second
there
time,
are
because
so
I
many
was diagnosed
common
when I was 20. That was
co-occurring
a very average
conditions. So
experience.
things like Ehlers-Danlos,
Because I
POTS,
never even considered the fact
ADHD,
that I
autism,
was autistic until
all has
some
to relate
random
to
person that I had met
I was
twice
doing
went.
a thing
You asked me if I was
yesterday on
autistic because he'd
ADHD
noticed
information.
these things
There's
and he
a
listed
whole
them off, and I was like,
inflammatory
wow.
Yeah,
That would actually
the
make a lot of
RCCX
sense.
gene
And then I
theory
started to
essentially
research it and
means,
went,
though,
oh,
that
this
there's a
all
cluster of
explains
genes
a
rabbit
lot
hole.
that affects
about
these certain
me.
things.
often
And
hypermobility.
like the next day, I went to my mum
and,
and
you
my
know,
sister's
different
with
cognitive
story
things
to
and
tell
stuff.
is they
I went to
all
them and
sort of,
went, "Do you think
they're
I'm
a cluster.
autistic?"
They
My
work
mum
together.
went,
So when
"No,
there's a
my
difference
sister
to
went,
you
yeah.
or there's a difference in one, it
And
affects
at this
all.
point, they were
So that's
like,
why you
12,
commonly
14.
see. So
I'm like,
and it's more common
what
to
do you
have
know?
both.
And then I
that's why
googled it
always
myself
say
and went,
it's more common to have
this does add up. This
both
explains a
autism
lot
and
of things.
ADHD
Like
than it is
dad,
to have one.
not
Like me not
they
being
go
able to make
hand
eye
in hand.
contact
Yeah.
and hopping a lot of
And-
class
yeah.
for not making eye
Well,
contact.
We'll have
Same
much the
thing with rolling
same
my eyes when I was
Yeah.
because I didn't
causes.
thought I was
And
like
like
I thought I
friend,
was just
it was she's
blinking or
autistic,
something, and Dad thought I
ADHD,
was rolling my
POTS,
eyes, and it was
Ehlers-Danlos, and
it explained a
and
lot.
then
But
then you throw in
the-
things like
I was
endometriosis
like, oh,
and
cool, this I've always
PCOS for
like, I'm gonna
women
just
and
continue.
so there's the
living
whole other that's a
life
whole other
as
side
I
of
always
things.
have. So I kept going. Well,
Neurodivergent
actually,
women have that
other
hormonal
because
side of
I'd
things,
always
which
been I'd always thought I was
always
just
fun.
anxious because then we found out about your hormones make your medication less effective. So at a certain time in your cycle,
it was
concomitant social anxiety.
explains
So
why we
medicated
act
for
up,
why
social anxiety, and I
PMDD is more
know
common.
that was the right thing.
PMDD is a
breed.
that was how I knew.
Previous
That's how I
dysphoria.
described it was when I first got on
Dysphoria.
medication. I was like, oh, hey, I never realized quite how anxious I was until I got on antidepressants.
Yeah,
Like,
I know
oh,
some of
because
that-
everyone
some of
thinks
that
it's
is
it's fully
PMS,
breathe.
not. It's like
Because it was just the
can be
norm.
like
It was how I'd always lived.
basically
It was what I
like
knew.
bipolar,
And
but
then
at
Yeah,
like
supercharged-
I was living my best
supercharged
life. This goes into
anxiety.
2020, by the way. So
Yeah.
I moved out. I was feeling very successful and living life, and then actually
doesn't get
moved
doesn't get
around.
diagnosed with much
I lived
stress.
in the same place for a year because COVID kind of locked everything down.
Yeah, I mean,
And then I moved around every sort of 6 months ish, and was like,
self-accommodation
why
thing.
do I still feel kind of sad?
School-
Why
yeah,
am
I don't- I
I?
don't
Why do
think
I still
schools know
struggle
what
with these
they
things?
can
Why am I not
offer in
satisfied?
terms of
And
because
it took me basically
even
burning
if-
out. Like,
exactly.
well, not basically. I
dare
did
I say,
burn
some
out. Just wasn't
some
principally or
accommodations
anything.
that should be made are actually
I self-diagnosed my
close to the
burnout,
point where
as we
actually,
do.
yeah, you can't do the job properly.
Because I just thought I was
If there was
stressed. I was really
accommodations
struggling in my
made.
job. And
And
like
there's
what
health
I
and
was
safety
like, why
aspects.
am I?
So I
Why
think
do I not
there
like?
needs to be
Why
some
am I struggling in
education
teaching? Why?
for schools
does.
Why
around
do I not like
actually
it?
what are the
Studied
small
for
things
this.
that
I
they
thought
can
this is what
do
I wanted.
as opposed
And
to, well, I need to
got to
wear
the point
headphones
where
in
I thought I was
class.
depressed. I was
They
going
will
up
say, well,
bile
it's
every
health and
morning. Like
safety
the
issue.
anxiety was
which I
that
guess
bad.
there's some
And
merit to
which there
that,
is
and
validity
it
to,
just
but
took
you know, it's
yeah,
a lot of the whole
kind of,
education
you know,
system really needs an
realizing-
overhaul. Like, and
well,
that's sort of what
obviously
the got
education,
it.
education
And
Queensland is
changed roles
perfect.
and
I still work
later,
for them,
but
so
then
I
it
can't
still
say
came
anything bad
back.
about them.
And
But in
No,
general,
and I'm not
school
saying-
systems,
when I
I'm not
started
saying
to burn out
Australian
again,
schools
when
or
I thought
I'm
I
saying
felt better, then I
globally,
didn't
like
feel
the
better.
whole. I mean,
So I kept
can't speak,
teaching.
I mean,
And
Australian
then,
education system and the Queensland
state,
eventually sort of
system,
thought,
but and that's
like
not
I
a
heard
fault of
these that
someone
these things on
specifically.
TikTok.
I'm just saying in
classic
general,
TikTok.
because
Always
so
down
that
the
should
rabbit
actually
hole. I
one
don't
of
know
the
if you're on
responses that I
TikTok.
got
That's a
from
young.
all my research was
Spoke to
international,
Peter, the
predominantly
last-
Australian,
the
but
second last,
international.
last
So I
episode of
had
the episode
many
before, she said
from
the exact same
various
thing.
states of Australia, as well
Watch
as
TikTok
people in
and then-
America,
Teaching
people in
danger
the
if you lose
UK,
so many
people in,
hours down there, but it's like,
Europe. I had
and I know so
some
many
from
people that
Amsterdam,
have had the
Sweden,
same experience. That's like, oh, I saw this thing on Facebook or this,
you know,
and
it's
this, and
these
oh,
are
that
all
actually,
it
it
just
just
shows
shows
you
you how common these
and
sort of
that
experiences
was about for me
are
with
with
ADHD.
not just
It was,
Australian,
also coming from a
and
friend that I
it
knew
comes down to
Australian.
the and had ADHD. And I was like,
this
the,
sort of,
it's
I mean,
that's
we
why we see
vibe,
so
and
many.
like, I feel like this could be
Teachers,
maybe
not just
there is
Australian,
something
but we
else
felt big
here.
time post COVID. Went to my GP and he was
But,
like, oh
you know,
yeah, maybe
teachers
got properly assessed,
leaving
and rapidly
found out
and autistic and ADHD
because a lot of them are
the ASD level
don't know how to treat
ADHD
themselves.
combined
But
type was diagnosed
you know,
in
and
April
it's just the system
2023.
doesn't support them.
So yeah, it just doesn't support the
No,
kids,
the
doesn't support
system
us.
is-
Since then, been on a big
it's
learning
very
journey
big.
myself.
The system
did
is
my
what it has
masters.
always been, and it is based on the pathological, the medical sort of model of things. We are slowly coming around to the
I was a
social model,
neurodivergent teacher,
but what we need to move
struggling
towards
with
is the
teaching
obviously
neuroaffirming
how
model
many
of things.
other people
Looking
felt
at
the
it
same.
and
Going, everyone has a
and
difference.
turns out there's a lot of us.
We just need to
because
learn
it
the
is a
different
very
things,
different
definitely.
experience being neurodivergent
cater for
in the classroom.
Like,
And that comes down to just me. I was like, oh no, I think you had another one. Just not cut out for teaching.
Yeah,
And like, why do I suck so
And
much
actually
at this? Why do I
teaching-
end up
teaching
drained
people
at
how
the
to
end of the
implement
day?
things, like teaching them
And
about
I
actually
realized it was
functional
basically
implication
constant
of
sensory overwhelm.
these
And
things to
just,
make things
I
life
wasn't
easier.
regulated. I was couldn't regulate, trying to regulate
But yeah, it's
23
interesting that
children.
it's not just
Like,
the problems.
it's
of-
just because I
yeah,
work
which
predominantly
I guess
lower
kind of
primary
makes
as well,
sense.
so it's
We
very
all run on a very similar
intensive
schooling
and
model.
stuff. They need a lot of
Yeah.
help.
And
Which
is all the
like we've
traditional
seen,
English maths.
you know, you have to have your
people say,
general
oh, it's been
numeracy,
diagnosed too much.
literacies, and
But
it comes.
It's
way
not. I've been
underdiagnosed.
listening to something
It's
I really
way
recommend,
underdiagnosed. And
but
I
I
look at
listened
the
to
schools
recently
these
was We Are
days, and
All
it's like,
Neurodiverse.
that's why people say, because there's so many kids
by
with letters
Sally
attached to
J.
their names.
Something J or something
And
James
it's not a bad
Wise.
thing.
I
Really
was always,
Yeah,
I listened to the
Dad
audio
always
but
said it
you
was
can buy it.
like, no, stop looking for
and it
labels.
breaks down
But
everything, like I
it's
said
not a
earlier,
bad
about
thing to
intersectionality and looking at like
It allows
have
kids to
that,
understand
have
the
that
brain.
knowledge.
Because
Exactly.
everything is
and I think
how
it's
everything
important.
is
So I like
co-mingled
what you
and
said about being out and
interrelated.
proud. I'm also out and proud, and I'm very
yeah, and I guess if you
try
took
and
if you
use
took
that
10 neurotypical
with my
people,
students to
they will
go,
have different
look,
strengths. Well,
like
they're not all
particularly
the
pull
same
them up when
things.
they're if people
Or maybe
are
have a
using
separate bank of
or you're
things that they're
autistic,
better
they
at
use
as
it
a
as like
group, but
more of an insult. And it's
took
like, look,
10
there's
of
nothing
them.
wrong with being autistic.
Exactly.
I'm autistic.
yeah, if you
And
took
that's the
10
thing
of
is
them and
being that sort of
put them in a
showing
room,
them that there is
they would all have their
there's
strengths and
success, there is
weaknesses.
people, and it does.
And that's the
they-
thing, is
people
everyone
that understand it.
neurodivergent,
Even when they
neurotypical,
don't
whatever your
understand
background,
themselves.
whatever your
And
culture,
it's-
whatever your race,
I mean, I'm still learning,
gender,
but, you know,
identity,
I don't know how
whatever.
much you feel like
So
you
many
understand
variants
yourself.
and
It was a
things
whole
that go
learning thing for
together.
me.
I'm more
and things
alright
that
these
influence
days,
each
but it's,
other.
it's
Like,
hard to tell.
you know,
Like I woke up
A
this
lot of
morning,
women
I
are
got up, I did
underdiagnosed
my
because
floor,
women
and
present
I
differently, and all
did
the research
my
was done on little boys.
admin on the computer, and then
And,
the kids got out of bed,
you
and,
know,
and I was not as very good as I thought I
understanding
was.
how
And then I slept
intersectionality
at my
works and
desk
how
at
all of these
lunch
things
in
interact
the
and
bathroom because I was so
interrelate
overstimulated.
with
And
each
I was
other.
like, I'm done. I just need
That
to
builds society,
switch
and
off my
that's what
brain
actually
for
disables us.
15 minutes of
That it is
Harvey
not
woke me up
accommodating,
"You
and it's
okay?
not
Do you need to
designed
go
for
home?" I'm like, no, I just
the
need
variants that
to
we have
not
in
be
all
in
of our,
existence.
like
Need a break.
in
Yeah,
everyone.
tap out.
15
Like
minutes, I
neurodiversity
needed
is
to
any
not
variance
be in
in
existence.
brain
And I was good again.
functions.
Good to go.
And
And
and that's the thing,
really,
is it's
I
just
mean,
learning.
I remember it was
Because
on
I
the
mean,
wellbeing
everyone can
committee
benefit
at
from
the
breaks
school,
and this and that,
but
but everyone has their own way of processing things and have
staff
their own
member,
sensory
contact
profile. That's
person,
a whole
network
other thing.
changes.
So, like I said, catch me because I will go on
journey
tangents.
itself, but
So,
it was
what
problems
did you find that
I went to school and I was like, actually
more people
neurodivergence face
neurodivergent specifically as teachers, but I imagine
when you
take
take
the
the
correlation
percentage
to
of
X,
other
Y, Z, and
professions
the
as well.
overlap of things.
100%.
The big
Hundreds,
what
what
were
the
the
biggest
biggest
ones?
that
So the
particular
biggest
school,
schools,
biggest ones that you could
130
probably
30
teachers,
people,
So,
microcosm of
unfortunately,
society.
like a lot
It's
of
like 55%
so
of
my
them
research was
are probably
qualitative research
under
done via
guessing,
via a
under
survey, which
assuming
I submitted to
would have been
a couple of
classified as
Facebook pages
neurodivergent.
that were neurodivergent
So-
pages. It
and
comes
went,
down
"Hey,
to voluntary
like,
generationally. You guys want to
Yeah.
give me your
Yeah.
experience? That's why you have a lot of what we're trying teachers and older people that
was
are
trying
getting
to
diagnosed later in life, and then you've got the other side of things that they're like, oh no, it doesn't exist. Blah, blah, blah. Like, well, there was open-ended questions.
That's getting
that
less
people
and
like
less.
to learn.
Hopefully
It is. We are slowly coming
to
around. Gather qualitative
It's
information
getting
on
less and
people's
less, and I
experiences, as
think
well as
it's partly, especially in
other
schools like that, branches most of the people.
Scales and stuff
You know,
to measure things
actually were
like
underdiagnosed. And
depression, anxiety,
I think part
well-being,
of what I wanted to do
sort
with
of
this
things.
podcast
And
was actually
the
get
findings,
that info out
unfortunately,
in
like
a in a way
well,
that people could just put their phones on.
they proved the hypothesis.
Like,
The hypothesis
rather than having to
wasn't
sit
really,
through a day-long
wasn't really a
PD
hypothesis,
to
but
get
what I
one thing,
expected
one bit of
was,
information. Yeah.
you know, negative.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like I said, with positive partnerships, we
Experiences.
were like,
Like,
well,
don't
this
get
is
me
all
wrong,
stuff we already knew.
a
And
lot of
even
people
that
also see
weren't
the strengths
neurodivergent,
because
like
we
when they
do
were,
have our strengths.
because they didn't give
But
us any
the
strategies or
common
anything new. They
sort
didn't
of-
give us any
Sorry, I'll just
content
jump on,
really that
I'm just looking back
was
at the
actually
research.
helpful to help our students. They just went, okay,
So
here's what
the
we've told you about
common
autism.
themes that I found.
Pick your student to focus on. Talk about how that affects them, and it's like, well, hang on, that's not, that doesn't actually help us though. Like we're here because we've tried everything we've already tried. And we're coming for something new.
So
Like
a lot of neurodivergent teachers are
Where
really,
is
Yeah, I mean,
really passionate about what they're
and a
doing. They
lot
want to
of,
help students
I
like
mean, a lot of
that.
the PD
So
out there
what
is
the
crap.
student
It's
that we
just the
were,
same.
we all know that we were
Information
at some point that we want to help.
PowerPoint slides,
And
and
as
doesn't
my
have any real
friend
teeth
says,
to
you always
it.
have to be, you have to be a
It's
little
not delivered by
neurospicy to
people
work with
that
kids because, you know, we
condition
kind of
or
got
have,
to be at a lower,
yeah,
like,
may have
be able to
worked
get to
with,
a
but I
kid
think there's
level
a level of
to get the
perspective you
kids
can't need to
on
get
board.
by.
I
Having
think
been in the system and
when
having
we
been
do
that
really
kid
well,
that
we're doing really well.
we struggle.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I got diagnosed so easily is because my head of
100%.
house grade 7.
Yeah, so we do
still
have
remembered who I was.
exactly, and that's the thing is people don't consider us as having a strength. They just see the
please diagnose it.
He still
yeah,
haunts my
and that's
dreams.
the problem
from
with
when I
low
was
and
in
high
grade
functioning
7,
autism is like
and in grade 12.
where we would be
But
considered high
I
functioning
think
neurodivergence because we don't
what's really
we're
cool is how
the
many
better
of you
term low
ADHD
support
kids
needs
that
because
you're
we
like,
don't
oh yeah,
have
there are
support
nightmares.
as much support needs as, you know, someone that's
The thing is,
non-verbal.
like, they
stuff
like
that
they're
doesn't
just
mean
I
struggle
difficult
prefer
because
that
it's a
term. I need to
misunderstanding of
use that
how
more
to actually cater for them. Like we see them as that hyperactive kid that interrupts in class. It can be, but it can also be the really quiet person that just sits there ruminating and is distracted and not paying attention.
Yeah, high and low functioning,
the different variants of ADHD, inattentive,
detrimental on both sides because
hyperactive
it
and combined.
disregards
Go a long
the
way.
struggles of high functioning.
Exactly.
Higher functioning
But even both
neurodivergence,
of
so
them,
they don't feel like,
oh no,
Usually
you can't
struggle.
be because you're girls. You're fine. You're successful. You've got your family. You do this, that, and the other. But it's like, well, no, I'm in the crying in the corner because my kid opened something too much. Like there's a whole other bit that they don't see, and then on the flip side, they don't see the strengths of the lower functioning. Like just because they may not communicate verbally doesn't mean they're incredibly function. And they have things to share. You know, artistic and creative things.
Swinging back and
Common
forth
ones
on a
were
table.
organizations.
This whilst he was very
Mostly
clearly and
among the
articulately saying something,
typically because
and we sort
you
of
know,
equate
ADHD
that
makes it a bit hard
hyperactivity
to
actually
be organized as such.
we
But
need
you
to get
know,
rid of that hyperactivity. Without that
and
hyperactivity,
the biggest one I think was empathy.
It's different now.
Exactly.
Even with medication, he still moves around. He's
And
still
empathy and passion because it
He's
was
just way more
there, and that's
controlled.
something that I relate to myself. As
that's
the thing is able to relate to
9-year-old
students
daughter
and
who is
passionate about helping them.
Mine is hyperactive.
So
Nobody
you know,
that was a
I've
problem.
always,
They
and that's
couldn't-
often
she
why
couldn't fly into the students.
White
All
girls
they
no,
did
no.
is-
So this is a strength that they
compliant, she
reported that
gets
they
C's. Okay, cool.
could relate
Yeah,
to
but-
neurodivergent students.
She would
So
very
it's like, you know,
getting
seeing
D's and E's
your
in.
younger self and
the
trying to
process
help your
of
younger
getting
self in
her
a sense.
stuff sorted.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's
And that comes
your
My-
students down to as
my
well
aim
in
is that
terms
they
of
could
like
have
on
the same
ADHD
experience that I
specifically,
did.
but like Carl's side with autism
so
is that
that's
we have
my
interest-based nervous
When
system.
things get hard, that's what I fall back on. I think most
So
same
we do
experience,
not
same
go
situation.
of anything of importance.
Yeah,
So, like if
exactly.
someone tells us we should watch
That's why I
things, we're
ended
like,
up
no, I don't want to.
going to
Tell me I should.
changing to
That's
guidance
PDA,
because
that's
I realized because what I
But you know,
went into
like
teaching to do
if we're
was
not
to be
interested
the
in
safe
it,
and supportive
it's
person.
so much harder.
to
Always
do.
what I said I wanted
And
to do.
we're not
Be
going
the safe to it, and that's why you get a lot of kids that didn't have
oppositional
one.
defiance
And
you know
just to be that person
because
that's like, well,
because
I
a lot of kids
can't do
can't
that.
like we don't know what's
physically
going on
painful
because it's not
Like,
interesting.
There's a whole
No,
other
we-
little
we
person in there
rise
that
to
we
the
need to find out
challenge,
about. And
We can-
you know, it's hard to do that.
I'll finish on this sort of anecdote.
That's why
I've been
diverse
native
counselling.
my life. It's currently very old school. Has to do with head department, and I'm drawing.
Congratulations.
I'm
All
doing
those
their
things.
desk.
That's hard for her.
Yeah, and science class was
Yeah.
there's more to teaching.
Yes, of course.
Than teaching
It
the
is.
content.
No, and that's the thing is
Interest-based,
that's a lot of
challenge-based brain.
don't understand. You know,
I'm doing
non-teachers
her
go, oh, it's so easy.
Our business.
No. Not when you've got
Well, I'm
25
still doing
kids with all
Still doing all my
variation of
stuff.
needs and
All the
things
house,
and
all the
interests and
school
things that
runs.
impact how they
That's
will
still
come into a
functional.
day. And it varies day to day. Because,
If you have an ADHD every single day, every single
Yep.
day, any challenge,
whether they are
slightly
neurodivergent or
There's a-
neurotypical
there's a
doesn't matter.
reason why
They have all the
feel
other
good
why they
about
act
it.
out stuff that we found out about guidance counseling
There's
because it's
no
all
way
child and
a
youth based. So you know,
neurotypical
the
person could
hormones
take
and all of
over. I would
there's
be
so
able to
many
take forever,
different
and I
things
will
that go
burn
on
out in a few weeks
that
if
make
things
things
are
difficult. I was
too
going to say,
hard.
make sure you look after yourself because yes, that's
How
the thing
much
is we can go
cleaning?
from doing all of
Yeah.
many things
were-
but then
So
we've got to also look
strengths
after
were
ourselves, otherwise we
organisation,
burn out and it gets really hard.
I had a cleaner relating to come in tomorrow to clean the house. house and someone to building relationships, it's probably easier.
Did you
How about we
guys?
stop looking
The
at
kids will
ADHD
know.
people,
They know when you're a
what
bit
you can't do, and it's like,
Mm.
what? what could we get them to do?
Appreciate it.
This is still safe for them.
And that's the thing,
Yeah,
is like it's
organisations
just about
are
getting
burnout,
getting them on
chaos,
side, is just getting
I
on
think
their
that's the way
level and
schools
making
need to
them
look
feel
at
heard
that
and
people
understood.
their
I
age
always
do
say
that.
that
If we keep them in
you
the same
treat
thing,
if
doing
you
the
treat
same
them
grades, so
like
class, so
treat
everything's really good.
treat
They're
them how
going
you
to
want
burn
them
out
to
just too
behave
poorly.
is sort of the way I look
How
at it.
far could we
Because
stretch
if you
them
treat them how
without
you expect them
stretching
to
too
behave, that's
far
how they will
to get
behave.
the maximum out of them?
So if we're treating
Which
them
is
like
going
they're
to
going to act
expectations,
up and how they're going
all
to,
of their well-being,
if they're going to be
going to be met.
difficult, then yes, they're going to react that way because they're reacting to us treating them that way. Whereas if we treat them like they are capable human beings and they can,
anxiety,
make their own decisions, and they are
I think that's a
essentially
good takeaway.
like
That
adults
actually,
themselves.
instead of looking at what our neurodiverse
So up the kids, but even with primary kids, you
look at
need to sort of
they do if they had
understand them
everything
and help
they
them
need.
understand
I
themselves
need
to be able to
chaos, not
actually
chaos,
do
but I need
things
something to
properly.
drive me.
Controlled chaos. So
Yeah,
you need
it's-
you
yeah,
need something to do,
If
but like
if
it's
we
getting
focus
forward
a little
otherwise.
more
So
on
you
well-being,
that's why we need the
classrooms,
multiple.
we need
we
to.
would have
That is a
far-
big.
So like
far less
Dad used to
issues.
give me
Yes,
a lot
that
of
is
crap
a
for
big
not being like
passionate
I would be
thing
on my
of
phone
mine.
and watching the TV. Like you're not paying attention.
It's
It's like,
like
well,
we
I am,
do
but I
need-
need
there
I
was a
need
big push in
need
Queensland
something else
the
as well. I
last couple
can't
of
do
years,
just
but
one. I
Yeah.
get bored.
I guess that was problematic for me because I came in a bit too
But
late
before
after that big push.
was
So
when
I
I was
was
also wanted to make
struggling
sure
to find a
because you
job.
said about talking about
It
things
is
that
fundamentally
schools
important. Like
and
look
because
at
that was Maslow's
Maslow's
hierarchy
hierarchy
of needs.
You
That
need to
Yeah,
have
so I have my
I'm really
personal
interested
basic
in.
needs met.
But what does
food,
your research
sleep,
say?
water.
No,
you
no,
need to
no,
have
no. Your
their
anecdote was
emotional
good,
needs met.
but I want to make
They're
to make
feeling
it
a
clear as a
safety,
because I
feeling
can't.
having connections and all
Please
of that
do look after
before we can
yourself.
even
Make sure
begin
because it is
to
impressive that you are doing all
expect them
that,
to
but
learn.
make sure
And
look after yourself because
that's what a
burnout
lot
is
of
not
schools
fun.
don't,
Then you
don't
get school
understand.
regression
It
and
varies
everything
for
gets really hard.
neurodivergent students
It's
as
not
well.
fun.
But if we just take everything
but
back
something that I
to
found really
the basics,
interesting
the
was
fundamentals of
some of the
ensuring
recommendations that
well-being,
are out
physical
there
and emotional,
already for
then
so not even
we can
my
definitely grow
research itself, but the
and
research that I looked at
better
for
our students' outcomes.
like it was
What's
adjustments for neurominorities. So
understanding of
there was
neurodivergent
a couple
kids?
papers that I want to mention
Most
because
teachers
I would
aren't
recommend
been through
looking at.
that. They can't
One
relate
is
on
by
that level.
Doyle.
They
2020.
can't
I
understand
never remember
because
the
they've never
actual
been through it.
And it is
title
hard
of it, but
to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it.
neurodiversity
Like
at work, the
experience, we did
biopsychosocial
a
model and the
whole
impact of
PD
working adult on
with,
working adults. So this is not just for teachers. This
positive
is all
partnership,
working
which is an
adults.
autistic based
It
program run
provides
through
typical adjustments. So
Queensland.
it discusses the
Which I was
typical
really
impact
excited for. And I was like, awesome, this is going to be a great learning thing for
being
everybody.
neurodivergent in the
And
workplace, and it also has a table
other co-workers and myself
of,
that were
typical adjustments
and
so
stuff and have
looking at
those are
different adjustment
neurodivergent
types, so like
and
work environment
we were like,
flexibility,
we're not
schedule
learning anything new.
flexibility,
This is all stuff we already
supervisor
knew,
or
and it was
co-worker
just a
support,
triggering point. Like there was a
different
video that they
stakeholders,
showed
executive
to
functional coaching
demonstrate
training,
the autistic
various types of
sensory
adjustments, and it also
experience of
provides
being
examples,
outside.
examples of those
all of the different noises
of
and stuff, and
sort
they
of
like we
adjustments.
got
So for
warned
work
that there was
environment
going
might
to
be
be
reducing sensory
a
distractions
lot of
and by allowing
noises. Well,
flexible
I did.
hours.
One of
which,
my friends didn't, and
poor
it's
thing had
having
knockdown
those different
because I
variations
have luckily had my
available
little
to
earplugs in.
and so the noises didn't
not
bother me,
just
but then
really
came the
applying
neurodivergent
the
employees, and that
But
set
there
me
was-
off. So I was out. And but other, I had
and another one
coworkers that were
was
like,
by
"Oh,
Angela
I
Watson.
actually really
I think it
vibe
was
with
an
that. I thought it
article
was
I
really
read.
cool." It's like, well, you see the
was
difference
last
in
year,
our
which discusses
processing
5 ways
here
that
is that
schools
to you it's
specifically
not
can
offensive.
offer support
To us,
to
it's
neurodivergent staff
like
and describes what these recommendations look like.
it's painful.
Yeah.
So 5
It's torture.
suggestions were allow for flexibility and autonomy.
So the deficits,
within
what,
breaks.
what,
So like,
what were the
yes, they have
deficits
breaks,
or
but
the
allow them to do
struggles
what they
that
want to do in that break.
Yeah.
Like, don't
you
say
had
the
come up
struggles.
the most in your
Or they have to do this.
Yeah. So the struggle,
allow them
predominant
the
struggles
flexibility to do
were,
that, do what they need
I
to
mean,
when they
sensory
need to.
is a big one.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's easier said than
in classroom
done
with, like you said, with the
15,
health
20,
the workplace health and
kids
safety,
and everyone
all
talking
those
at
other
the same time. It
considerations that
does
don't
not take
necessarily
long
work.
for that to overwhelm you.
Designate quiet areas and
And
mitigate the effects of
particularly
those
never
stimulating environments.
But
Communicate
Correct.
social
I
and
hide
interpersonal
in
relationships. So
Huh?
having
hide in my dark
relationships with
classroom.
colleagues.
Yep.
And
Yep.
worrying
Exactly.
about being standoffish to things. And but then there's also
Give
the
clear
side of
directives
the
and to make the
professionalism
invisible
and struggling
expectations
with
visible. That's a big one.
knowing,
Because I know I
like
often
listening to leadership
struggle
and
when
struggling with
things
management,
are expected
which is
without
a common autistic
being
thing.
informed.
Not
Like,
not seeing
When
the
things
hierarchy
are
of
written,
general,
are
they're
written
just like,
like
well, if
rules
I
and
know
stuff
more, then I
that
know more.
aren't
Like it's
followed
like
as well. That's also
I'm not going to bow down to you because
when rules
I can
aren't
get us in
followed, but
trouble.
Right. Then
Yeah,
there's
there's
the justice that goes,
like
like
staying
why
in
am I doing
and
this if you're not
professionalism
doing
in
it?
terms
And
of that
admin
goes both
stuff, like
ways. But then it's like,
ADHD makes
well,
it
I'm
hard to
getting
stay
on
on
top
top
of
because
all
I
the
didn't know that
reporting
this
and the
was what you
paperwork and
expected.
everything
Like
else
if you
that
just
goes
told me
into
what you
being a
expected, I
teacher.
could do it. But I need to know what the expectations are.
And the other
Communication.
one was
So like things like
professional
sudden
development
changes
and other topics
and
related to
like no
executive
meetings
functioning in
without
organizations.
warnings and like things that
Just
are
about to say the biggest,
So
the
I
biggest
had
one is the
hours in a
meeting.
PD that I already
Yeah.
know
Just come have a chat in my office. It's like
so I
PD for
one of
ADHD,
ruined
anxiety,
my
and
day.
PhD.
I had one really good
once
where I
PD
was
experience
out for
that
my
I
morning
recommend.
walk and I get an email that was like,
Of
hey,
course,
can we
now I'm
come
not
and
gonna be able to
can you
think
come
about it.
in for a chat this morning?
And I
Sorry, I
really
can
like
put
this
it-
And
lady
this was not
too.
the first time
Love
that she'd
it.
done this.
I
I
can
had
put it on the
spoken to
screen
this
or in the
this
description
my
if you
head
can't
of
find
can't
it.
remember.
primary
I'm trying to
previously
remember what
going,
the
hey,
names of the,
can you not just ask me for a chat because it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's about.
Yep.
She didn't, and it was just
Christina Keeble.
You know, just I literally had a meltdown that morning. My
did
poor friend
a,
and coworker had to
I
calm me
went and
down, help me
attended
write an
a
email back to go, look, I can't
PD sort of
work on this meeting.
webinar
This
seminar by
she did
her,
actually give me it was context to
last
something,
year,
but it was like, look,
locally,
I can't
and
face
it was
this right
about
now. I'm not
creating
not in
inclusive
a space.
spaces
Like
for
you can't
classrooms
just
for
drop that on me and
neurodiverse
expect it to happen.
students.
I
She
need
was
time to prepare
she's
for these things. I
neurodiverse
need time to
herself. She
process.
was also an educator. She was also a
100%.
neurodivergent parent to
We'll-
So either
neurodivergent
that, let's
children.
talk
So she
right
had all
now,
of these different perspectives
or
on those
move on in with
experiences,
context. And exactly
which
what's
was
going to happen.
amazing. You know, you don't get
Exactly.
that very often. It needs to come from us. Like
and
so
that was the
quote or the
self-reported
saying
strengths
about
and
with struggles
I
of
think it's also the
neurodiverse
research
teachers.
that
Like
they also
I also
neurodivergent
asked about
research
was trying to come out with
their
these like no,
self-accommodations that was
basically
to do
nothing
with
done
at home.
about us without us. So
More so because then we
like you
discussed
can't
work
do
accommodations
any
was its
studies or
own
say
thing,
anything
which unfortunately
about us without us being
non-existent
involved
because
for a
you
lot
don't
of
know.
people.
It's not your experience, it's our experience.
The work accommodation.
Yeah,
But like even if
but
they have
her
if you
PD
don't-
was amazing. Like it was through a Loom Learning. Have you
Hi,
I don't know if
everybody.
you're familiar
This is
with
Stu. I think I've been
Lots of
someone
them have now. Sorry to have a go.
yeah, because they have a bunch of different ones,
more
which
people
they're
interested
awesome. Like they were very
in
well
what
set
other
up.
people have to say.
We got
So
like
that's
little
always
notepads,
nice.
we got pens, but we also got fidgets. So we got
This is
like
episode number
amazing.
6.
They
I
had
did that
tanks,
classic
like,
ADHD
they
thing where the
both
first 3
we all had
episodes were put
tangles,
up
we all
in
had
like
different
7
things.
seconds.
And she was completely fine. She told us from the start,
Scrambled
she's
to
like, get up,
5
do whatever you need to
Everybody was
you know,
delayed.
to
So
be able to do
it's gone
to
back to
be
1 a
here
week,
and
which I
to
think is
listen and function and process what
yeah.
we're learning
As it should
today
be.
because
This
you
is
know,
Darby,
we needed
and
to
we
be
are
able
going to
to
talk today about
learn the way we need to learn.
neurodiversity,
There was
mostly
also
in
like there was
teaching,
exercise
so we
halls
just
at the back that we
as
could
well.
get if we needed it.
What
It was
all
just
means,
having
why is it
those things
important?
available made it like I didn't use them. I mean, I
Why?
used fidgets.
What
I
are the
brought
sort
my
of
own fidgets,
problems
but you know,
that
it was a
people,
tool. They provided me
neurodiverse
with a
people
tool.
will face in teaching, which I guess
But
is
you know, it was
probably
just
the
having
same
those
that
options
they would
that
face
made it
in other
so much more
professions.
accessible. And the fact that it came from someone with lived experience and had all of those different perspectives
Neurodiverse
was
teachers
amazing.
dealing with
So I
neurodiverse students,
I
and
highly recommend
an
checking out
environment that's
Christina
not
Keeble.
enough
She was
either of them.
amazing.
Awesome.
I think we can then finish on what read and what things can schools do, what can other teachers do to find it. But thank you so much. Make things
Yeah,
easier.
thank you.
The whole idea of this understanding
As
even
much
to
about
that
learning
point to help people along. So I'm going to hand this
come
over to
along,
Darby.
and there's so many people out there
There,
that
she
knows
knows
what
what
she's
things
talking about and loves to
talk about it. So that's
both
both
that
that lived experience plus the. So
Yes.
I'm going to hand this over to you, and I'll ask questions along the way. So
Awesome.
if like getting
All
that
right, thanks, Liam.
elusive geo job.
Yeah, I don't have anything prepared.
think
per se.
everybody-
I just,
I
you
think
know, I know a
about
lot.
20 years ago, they
I'm not
said
gonna say
someone
I'm
said
an
they had a
expert.
shortage
I still
once.
learn every
they're
day
still
is a
saying
learning
it.
experience.
But yeah, there was
being
that
like
big push in
diagnosed myself.
Queensland, like
So
I
I
was
was
only
diagnosed
22. There was a
autistic
big
at 20,
well-being
and
counselling push, which
diagnosed,
evidently I missed the boat on.
later
because I
diagnosed
started too
autistic
late.
and ADHD 2 years, just over
But
2
yeah,
years ago,
hopefully,
or a
as
little under
we
2 years ago,
as
actually.
more schools,
developing
so this became a whole